senior black church leader in this country by quite some distance. If they, as a group, had to choose anybody, it would always have been him. And frankly, he was, at the point at which he was appointed, regarded as an authentic representative of that community. So that is the underlying point about his appointment. But I want to say this. I think personally I failed on this issue in three ways. One, I did not understand exactly what the Evangelical Alliance represented. You may say it's strange, but I'm a Methodist. It's a different piece of territory to me, and I, frankly, didn't grasp much of what I now do grasp. Secondly, I failed to distinguish the person I know, who I know very well, Reverend Edwards, from the office he held. And third, and perhaps this is the thing I most want to say, I failed to anticipate the intense hurt his appointment would generate. And I'll be frank, I should have got this. When I was 7 years old, I had a close friend. 20 years later, I reflected. I had never been in his house, and the reason I'd never been in his house because his mother always stood at the door, and he always had to come in for tea. But I couldn't, for some reason, it was never possible for me to come in, and I later realized what that was all about. My sister found some years after her best friend's so-called 17th birthday that there'd been a birthday party. She hadn't been invited. I could go on. My first girlfriend at college was at a Methodist college. Her family were devout Methodists. I was never able to visit her home. So I have some sense of what this kind of rejection exclusion means and the intense hurt it causes people individually. But sometimes, of course, it's not possible to translate your own experience to those of others, to adopt in real world the Christian precept of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And I just want to say, there are people, some of them in this room, and I particularly want to mention Maria Etzel, who gave me what for over this, and Angela Eagle, who did so perhaps slightly more gently than Maria, for really making me think about this. And much of what I've just said has been out of a consideration of what they've said to me. So I want today to acknowledge real hurt and pain. I understand that this has caused many of the LGBT communities. And I want to acknowledge my own failure to acknowledge that to understand it wasn't just a few strong voices from lobby groups, but the voice of many in the community. I wish that we had handled this differently and that I knew then what I know now. But that is, I'm afraid, sometimes the way life works. But let me now say a word about Joel himself. I supported the appointment of Joel Edwards, and I continue to support his work today. And I'm here going to ask you to do what many faiths ask us to do every day, to listen and to try to understand the world through someone else's eyes. His personal position is clear, and it has always been clear to me personally. He condemns homophobia and ensures that and believes that private conscience shouldn't infringe on public duty. Some of you may know his background. He comes from what my family would regard as the outer fringes of Pentecostalism. He's made a very long journey, a deeply personal journey that's brought him from that position to a position where he genuinely believes that he works to defend equal rights of all regardless of their characteristics. Last month he spoke to our internal sexual orientation mandate group, and I think they would say that they ended that discussion positively as he discussed his position with them and listened to theirs. As I understand it, people left that meeting feeling that they understood more clearly what he had to say and why he said it. But more importantly, feeling that he did not threaten the work and values of the Commission. But crucially, I want you to know this, because I can say all of that and you don't have to believe it. But let's deal with a matter of fact. There is a reason why Joel Edwards is no longer General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance. And it may be hard for people to see this who come from outside the community in the background that he does. He made a choice, either to join us or to stay with an alliance much of whose attitude he could no longer espouse. And he made that choice. And I'm going to ask you today at least to consider that sometimes out of conflict can come new possibilities. Some people have made the comparison with race. How would I feel had Nick Griffin been appointed to the Equality and Human Rights Commission? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I would say that the comparison is not precise. Nick Griffin heads a party that would not have me as a member. Joel Edwards is not any longer in anything like that position. But I would also say this, and I know this is a dangerous thing for me to say and difficult, and I'm happy to take the criticism and the questions and answers if I've got this wrong. If we take the parallel of civil rights precisely, let's remember that things changed because people talked across lines where it was never thought possible to have a conversation. We think today it was John F. Kennedy who brought in civil rights voting acts legislation. It wasn't. It was a Southern right-wing senator, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who brought that and the Great Society. Now, I'm not going to paint Joel Edwards as some kind of hero. He isn't. Or indeed LBJ as some kind of hero. But let us remember, what is the point here? The point here is change. And sometimes we have to open our mind to the possibility that change comes in strange and difficult ways. I've said a great deal about this, but I wanted to say that because, as I've said, people in this room and others have talked to me at some length about this, and I would not be doing my job properly, nor would I be, frankly, much of a human being if I didn't pay attention to the emotional content of this. And I don't mean that in some sort of silly, pejorative way. I think politics and public life today doesn't recognise enough the significance of how people might feel, and that is why sometimes we make mistakes. It is perhaps, I'm not going to resile on somebody I regard as a significant figure and somebody who contributes, but I do think we could have handled this differently, and I hope that we can enter a dialogue which will help us to manage to find a way through this dilemma. I know it is one, I know I haven't resolved it today, but I wanted to come here, Richard, simply to say that I recognise that, and I don't hide from it.